So welcome to week 10 of our Sunday Reset session. Our topic for today is embracing a new normal and the ever-changing nature of life. I'm going to start with a poem that I think each and every one of us can relate to in some way, shape, or form. It's called The Paradox of the Trapeze. And so as I'm reading this poem, I want you to really reflect on the words, maybe even closing your eyes and really taking it in and see if you can imagine yourself in this story. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to a trapeze bar, swinging along, or for a few moments, I'm hurtling across space between the trapeze bars. Mostly I spend my time hanging on for dear life to the trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along a certain steady rate of swing, and I have a feeling that I'm somewhat in control. I know that most of the right questions and even some of the right answers, but once in a while, as I'm merrily or not so merrily swinging along, I look ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar looking at me. It's empty, and I know, in that place in me that knows, that this new bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness coming to get me. In my hearts of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on the present well-known bar to move to the next one. Each time it happens, I hope that I won't have to grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grip on my old bar. And for some moments in time, I must hurtle across space before I can grab the new bar. Each time that I do this, I'm filled with terror. And somehow it doesn't seem to matter that in all my previous hurdles, I've always made it. Each time I'm afraid I will miss, that I will be crushed on unseen rocks in the bottomless basin between the bars. But I do it anyway because I must. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call faith. There's no guarantees, no net, no insurance, but we do it anyway because hanging on to that old bar is no longer an option. And so, for what seems to be an eternity, but actually lasts a microsecond, I soar across the dark void called the past is over, the future is not yet here. It's called the place of transition. And I've come to believe that it is only place that real change occurs. I have this sneaking suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing. And perhaps the bars are just an illusion we dream up to not notice the void. Yes, with all the fear that can accompany transitions, they are still the most vibrant, growth-filled, passionate moments in our lives. And so transformation of fear may have nothing to do with making fear go away, but rather with giving ourselves permission to hang out in the transition zone between the trapeze bars, allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens. Yes, it can be terrifying, and it can also be enlightening. Hurtling through the void, we just may learn to fly. So this is an excerpt from Warriors of the Heart by Danan Perry. And I'm sure there's a lot about this story, this poem this parable that you connect with, because I believe that in this particular moment in time, where we are in the cycle of the COVID-19 pandemic, that we're all experiencing a significant shift right now. States and schools and stores and salons and offices and churches are already starting to open up. And for me, I sense that people are responding to this in quite a few different ways. So I'm sure for some of us, who are like the dog who's been home all day, seeing grass for the first time and absolutely excited and totally beside themselves, loving and totally embracing their freedom. And then there's some people who are scared and they're worried that people aren't taking the right precautions and fearful of what will mean for them and their health. Some people I know are struggling to adapt to job loss or some other significant change that the pandemic has brought into their life. And even if you still have your job, a lot of companies are actually getting rid of their offices. Some people I'm understanding are struggling with the slower pace and are very much looking forward to speeding things up again. And for those for whom things sped up for, they're really getting fatigued and worried that they cannot keep up with this pace. And even for those of us whose lifestyle or routines may actually not be that different, maybe your life has not been uprooted as much as many others, I believe that it's frankly impossible to avoid this social contagion of the restlessness that so many others are experiencing. Because the reality is that in some way, shape, or form, we are all at a point of transition. Whether for ourselves or simply for life around us, it's possible to imagine, it's impossible, frankly, to imagine that life and the world around us can be shifting and morphing in such an unprecedented way, and that we somehow remain the same. And so for all of us, life in some way is asking us to let go of the old bar, to take a leap into midair and to reach for the bar in front of us, not knowing what will come next. And so what will it take for you to let go of the old bar that you're holding on to right now? Leap into midair and land safely on the new bar. This is my invitation for today's talk, reflecting on what it will take to make this possible, what it will take for us to embrace the reality and the nature of life that is so ever-changing. So I'd like to share a few offerings, and the first is the concept of impermanence. This idea of accepting that there is a universal changing reality of life, that all things must come to an end. So if you're familiar with Pema Chodron, one of my favorite books, which was really helpful for me in a very difficult time in my life, it's called When Things Fall Apart. Pema says, impermanence is the goodness of reality, just as the four seasons are in continual flux, winter changing to spring, to summer, to autumn, and just as day becomes night, light becomes darkness, and darkness becomes light again. In the same way, everything is constantly evolving. And so think about that for a minute. Think about the reality that people, things, and experiences, circumstances are constantly forming and evolving around us. It's just the cycle of life. And if you think about the trees, for example, that drop their leaves during the winter time, recognizing that if they don't drop their leaves, that they will actually die. And so in a way, without impermanence, life is impossible. Think about this. Without impermanence, how will babies grow? Without impermanence, how will the sick get better? Without impermanence, how will plants and animals grow? Paulo Coelho, who is the author of one of the most amazing books in history, The Alchemist, reminds us that if you're brave enough to say goodbye, that life will reward you with a new hello. And so this law of impermanence can really us to ease our way through time of transition and pain as we try to remember that this too shall pass. And if we can remember that and appreciate that, then we can actually loosen our grip on that bar, loosen our attachment to the familiarity of how things used to be. And when faced with change, we can recognize it. Oh, this is impermanence, and accept the reality of impermanence, that everything must and will come to an end. But I know that's easier said than done, because what happens when we get stuck? I mean, it's hard for us to let go when we're feeling stuck. And so this is where real courage comes in. And this is my second offering as you reflect on what it will take to take that leap of faith. The courage to embrace the groundlessness of transition, to go with the flow of life and to surrender to the momentum of the bar as it's swinging, and allowing that momentum to help us to fly. Because in this in-between place of groundlessness, we must learn to appreciate both the yin and the yang of life, both the scariness of the unknown as well as the excitement of the possibilities before us. And we must not allow the negativity bias, which we've talked about in previous sessions, to rob us of our joy, that we can hold space for both. And as we've explored in our Mastering the Mind sessions, it's important for us to remember that suffering is very much rooted in a very lopsided view of reality, right? That the untrue stories that we tell ourselves about the one-sided possibility of how things unfold must be expanded beyond our limiting beliefs to also include hope, and to trust our basic wisdom and our resourcefulness to figure things out. As Marie Forleo says, everything is figure outable, right? And so much of the stuck part of ourselves, frankly, is our inability to be with what is here. And so in this in-between space, we must find a way to build capacity, to expand a window of tolerance that we can hold space for whatever emerges. We must find a way to anchor ourselves. And my personal invitation for you is that you experiment with anchoring on what you know you can rely on for sure. The thing that is always there to support you. I'll share a story about a time when I had breakfast with a friend of mine, and I was going through a very difficult time in my life. This was about 2017. And I believe that most people, they tend to go through a significant struggle in their life. Either their work or their career is being uprooted, and so they lean on their family, their friends, their relationship as a stabilizing force. And sometimes it's vice versa. And so for me, it was both at the same time. In a way, I felt that I was going through a bit of an identity crisis, frankly. And I was telling her that as my marriage is falling apart, as I was sort of in the in-between stage, right, of figuring out who and what I am, and how I defined my value and my worth in this world, I was starting to loosen my grip from being the person that I knew myself to be, which was the overachieving perfectionist, and very slowly moving towards a new version of myself, but that I hadn't quite defined yet. And so there I was in this in-between stage of figuring out who and what I am and what I wanted my life to be like. And I'll never forget it, we were sitting in Busboys and poets in DC, and she asked me what it felt like to be in that in-between stage. And I paused and I thought about it for a moment, and I said, you know, it feels like I've fallen into a deep, dark well. It's slippery, it's cold, and I'm not quite sure if there is water beneath me to catch me if I fall, or if I'm going to fall and break a limb. And so I'm grasping onto the sides of this well and scrambling to find, a brick that I can somehow hold on to. And it's like letting go of the trapeze bar, right? And floating in midair. That I felt this sense of groundlessness and confronting the uncertainty of whether I would make it to the end, if I would survive. And her next question absolutely floored me. She said, looking me straight in the eye, "What do you know for sure?" No. Do you ever have that friend who asks you what you know is a very profound question, like they're leading you as a witness, and you're not quite sure where they're going with this, and you just want them to tell you, I don't know, so just tell me? Because for me, it felt like I had just expressed to her that I knew nothing for sure, that I was swimming in the midst of uncertainty in this in-between space of midair, not having anything to hold on to, right? And she's asking me, what do I know for sure? And she said, what do you know is always there no matter what? And I couldn't figure it out. So by this time, I'm completely annoyed. I'm like, just tell me, like, obviously there's something important that you think I need to be thinking about here. And if you think it's going to help me, why don't you just tell me what it is? And she said, well, don't worry about getting to the answer right now. In due time, you figure it out. And I remember leaving so annoyed with her. Like, what kind of friend are you? Like, why wouldn't you just tell me? Anyway, I let it go. And I can't remember if it was that evening, frankly, or the next morning, but the next time that I sat to do a meditation, I remember my mind being very scattered. And I just had this feeling of restlessness. I mean, this was just sort of the pervasive motion that I was going through at the time, just very unsettled, very restless. And so I remember trying to really focus on my breath. And it clicked. It clicked to me that the breath is the thing that's always there. That the breath, assuming as long as we have life, we have our breath. It's always there. It's the one thing we can be sure of. And so the breath for me has in many ways become my anchor in the in-between phases of life and transition and difficulty, this notion of breathing through an experience, of feeling held and feeling supported in those moments and resting in the one thing that we know for sure. And so that's what we will practice today in the guided practice. We will explore the impermanence of our moment-to-moment experience. And then I'll guide you through a visualization to support you in exploring and leaping into the possibilities of your future self. So let's begin. I'll invite you to sit comfortably in a posture that you feel holds dignity, without being too erect, but just soft enough that you can feel relaxed. And you may soften or close your eyes, starting by taking in a few long, deep breaths. And so at your own pace, just breathing in a quality of relaxation and calm, and really allowing the power of your breath to comfort you in this moment. Allowing with each breath to deepen even more into a relaxed state. And I'll invite you now to tune in to the most vivid experience of your breath. And so exploring where in the body you can locate this vivid experience. Noticing the details of the texture, maybe the pace, or even the length of the breath. Just taking a moment to really tune in and to see what are you noticing about your breath. And allowing your breath to just return to its natural rhythm, I invite you to just notice the sensation of life running through you. What is it like to notice life around you? And so right now, I'll invite you to expand your awareness to the fullness of your current experience. Noticing not just the breath, the movement, and ever-evolving conditions within your body, and the ever-changing movement of life around you. And so you might sense the sounds around you. Maybe you can hear voices, television, cars driving by, a fan or the air conditioning. And without wishing these were not part of your experience, really allowing yourself to embrace these sounds and the fullness of these experiences as part of your practice. And take a moment now to scan the areas of your life and identify a point of transition that is very alive for you. Reflecting on your version of the old trapeze bar, the place of comfort, of familiarity, and the leap that is being asked or required of you right now. And so really assuming the seat of the observer, just allowing yourself to bring to your mind's eye the details of this scenario without getting caught up into the story or the details of it, without being caught in the trance of this scenario, but just bringing this issue to mind. And just noticing whatever is emerging for you in this moment. Noticing the thoughts that are present, the feelings and emotions that might be present, and any sensations that you might notice in your body as well. And returning to the breath, using our breath as an anchor. Really allowing the power of the breath to expand your capacity to sit with whatever is here. Not wishing it away, not wishing that it was different. Just observing and being with whatever is here right now. And in any moment that you sense some discomfort, some hesitation, just allowing yourself to breathe through that experience. Allowing the power of the breath to calm your parasympathetic nervous system, to support you in widening your capacity and tolerance. So that you can be with whatever is. And imagine now that you are walking on a beautiful trail. The sky is blue, the air is crisp, the temperature is perfect. Notice the trees, the scenery that's around you. If there's a smell in the air, sounds, and imagine for a moment that you could journey forward in time to meet your future self. A version of you that is maybe 3, 5, 10, or even 20 years away from today. And really engaging with yourself as you are moving towards this future self. Continuing to walk on this beautiful trail. Continuing to be in and to enjoy the moment. Until at some point you come across your future self. This is an older, wiser, and more awakened version of you. Take a moment to notice where this future self is living. What do you notice about the surroundings? What do you notice about your future self? What do you notice about what your future self looks like? And maybe even noticing the feeling of being in their presence. What is the quality of that presence? So you might let your future self know that there is something that's going on in your life right now. An area where you might be having some difficulty letting go, an area where you might notice yourself really gripping tightly. And this may be in a relationship, work, or even just how you're in relationship with yourself. And so go ahead and share the details of this scenario with your future self. and ask for guidance. Listening with an open heart and open to receiving the gifts of their wisdom. Without judgment, just giving yourself permission to listen and to receive the wisdom that they have to offer you. And before leaving, you might find out if there is any message that your future self wants you to leave with. A message that perhaps will serve you right here, right now, in the moments of your current life. And before you go, just take a moment to imagine the feeling, the vision, and wisdom, and the heart of your future self completely filling you up, moving through your body into your cells and even the spaces in between your cells, into your heart and into your mind. And you can sense the wisdom and the possibility to always remember and reconnect with your future self. And so what is it like to embody this wiser, more awakened version of you? What do you notice? What does it feel like? And as you return to this moment, sense what you're carrying with you. Sense the calling and presence and aliveness of your evolved self right here and now. Acknowledging that this wisdom, that this knowing is available to you even now. And taking a deep breath, really allowing this experience to sink in for you. Just taking a moment to reflect on what this has been like for you to encounter your future self. What stands out to you about this encounter? Maybe something that you notice is surprising about your future self, exciting, disappointing. What do you notice about the way that you experienced this encounter? So very slowly bringing your attention back to this present moment. Maybe noticing the sounds around you, the feeling of the air, and just starting to reconnect again to this evolving nature of life around you. And continuing to anchor on the breath. As you gently transition and bring our practice to a close, opening the eyes very softly, and maybe bringing some movement back into your body. So welcome back. If you'd like to, you are more than welcome to grab a journal, a pen, maybe take some notes in your phone, but take this opportunity and even press pause on the video to just capture this experience. What is it about this that you always want to remember? What really stood out to you? And so as you experienced in this practice, this is the nature of life. As you tuned into the life evolving both within you and around you, you notice that there will always be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And with that end comes a new beginning. And the more that we practice both accepting the reality of impermanence and leaping into the possibilities of our future self, the more we can realize and trust in our own self-reliance and resourcefulness, with the belief that all will be well, that no matter what, we always have our breath, and that this too shall pass. And so as we bring our session to a closing here, my offering to you is that you may always remember that life is a book of chapters, each with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And may you find the courage to start embarking on your next chapter, trusting the intrinsic wisdom that is within you, knowing that when all else fails, you have the breath. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this video and think that there is someone who might enjoy it as well, please leave a comment and share with your loved ones. Thank you.